Welcome back everyone to Sustainability in Motion. And today I have our senior consultant, Thomas, next to me. Thomas, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be here.
Thank you. So I'm Marc Roodhuyzen de Vries, CEO, co-founder of Nexio Projects. And today we're going to speak about compliance from a private equity perspective, but also take into account how it is as a portfolio company of a private equity to be involved in compliance. So Thomas, maybe to kickstart, what does compliance mean from a private equity perspective and what's happening in that space at the moment?
So I think, right, from a sustainability context point of view, the CSRD is obviously the big upcoming regulatory introduction at this moment for which all companies need to prepare their compliance. So the CSRD is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Yeah. It's really going to be applicable for all larger European companies and some more. Therefore, as a PE, obviously holding a portfolio of various companies, it's super important to already know that this is coming, it's coming soon, and you need to get prepared for it.
And what's the implication of that compliance? So the CSRD is coming, a big regulation that now by 2026, if I'm correct, a lot of companies will need to report on 2025 for most of them if they're not listed. Yeah. What is that implication for private equity? So how are they going to work about this?
So on the one hand, obviously, the CSRD is a reporting requirement, right? So we need to start disclosing on a lot of KPIs, metrics on various topics, as well as some, let's say, more general disclosures of certain processes, whether they're present in the company or not. Overall, when we look at sort of the preparation journey towards CSRD, what we're looking at is first really determining what topics matter for you, because the CSRD is introducing 10 large, high-level topics. And you really want to make sure which ones of those are material to my company, which ones are the ones that are important for me, my operations, my activities, and therefore do I need to report on and develop a bunch of other things. This, in essence, is let's say, the final goal of it, to be able to comply in line with all the requirements that the CSRD is setting out. This also includes not just the reporting angle, not just the data metrics side of things, but also really reinventing or at least outlining your processes in such a way around governance, around the reporting structure, about the due diligence you do in your supply chain, and really picking up all those different pieces in the light of sustainability, ensuring that they're fully compliant with everything that CSRD is requesting from companies at this moment.
Quite a lot of steps that you need to do.
Yeah.
What's the end game of the CSRD? So what can we expect if we just take the CSRD as a whole? What can we expect that the output is that we have and what we can use? What's that purpose about?
Yeah. So for an individual company, going through such a process, you will have a really solid sustainability strategy and a really solid sustainability report at the end of that, right? Alongside of some more procedural, process-wise implementations that will allow you to execute that strategy and to effectively also collect all the KPIs you need to report on. The strategy side there, where CSRD is asking us to report backwards, but also really set goals and targets for the future, I think that's where the interesting thing is also for a lot of companies that might still have, let's say, a more defragmented way of managing sustainability across the company. CSRD is really that moment of, okay, let's bring everything together, consolidate it into one real strategy for that particular company. If we look at, obviously, the role that PE firms play in that, I think it's very important they start early on engaging with all their portfolio companies, because it is a compliance thing coming up, right? So they need to move in that direction, and that's really where, obviously, PEs have a great leverage point to engage and move that ahead.
And maybe to zoom in on that, what would you foresee the biggest challenge for private equity to push all these, of course, not push, but also get them compliant, all these portfolio companies, to the next step? Yeah. Where do you see now the gaps at the moment from a private equity perspective?
I think it all starts with having a clear overview of where you're standing and where you need to get to, right? So the very first thing is seeing, okay, from the companies in my portfolio, which ones of those actually meet the requirements for needing to comply with CSRD. That might only be half, it might be all of them, but that's really your first batch of focus in that sense, right? The other companies could tag along in a similar process, but those that need to comply, need to comply. And as you said, 2026 is for most of them that are not listed. So if they're for the majority in the hands of a PE firm, then that's most likely the case. There's a few scenarios where that could be 27 or 28 even.
No, and so this is where you see, of course, that the private equities also need to get the buy-in, and also where you see, of course, like you said, the lack also maybe of knowledge also from a private equity on what CSRD actually means for the company.
I mean, this is a huge challenge for companies themselves, right? And companies themselves are many of them are used to managing sustainability in some way, or ESG or CSR or whatever you call it at this moment. So they oftentimes have some sort of structure, some sort of agenda on the topic. So at least they're knowledgeable, okay, these are our activities and this is how it relates to these topics, right? For a PE firm, some might actually be super knowledgeable already about it and might have made certain investments even based on a certain ESG performance or the way that they foresee certain companies to remain very relevant also in a world that needs to move towards sustainability, see it as a leverage point to advance certain industries, etc. But the real challenge is oftentimes they don't have that same granular operational level of expertise of a certain company. So it really needs to be a ping pong between the PE and the company itself. And I think the PE firm there has a big role in really incentivizing and motivating and maybe engaging onto the process, especially for those companies that struggle maybe a little bit more with getting on that road themselves.
So here a lot of engagement is needed to really get that ball moving from a private equity, but also from a portfolio company perspective. So there's a big challenge there.
Yeah.
And what would you say, just as a last there has been some news that also on the 23rd of August, some changes have been applied to the CSRD, and maybe also good for the public. For the ones who, of course, started before the 23rd of August, it's good to listen to the next question that's coming up. It's just maybe to just in a nutshell, Thomas, what has a bit changed? There has been a small iteration to the CSRD, which is important also, and I think that some are aware, some aren't. But maybe just a quick zoom in on there also for the private equities and the portfolio companies.
Sure.
What can we expect just as an extra?
So I think we just mentioned already, the first step of getting CSRD compliant is really that double materiality assessment, as we call it. So in identifying which topics are most important for you. That process was sketched out by CSRD relatively well already in the first drafts. Obviously, GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, has also been working with double materiality already for, I think, since 2006. So the concept is not new there. The primary focus of how we would approach it along GRI guidelines and have also approached it with the initial prescription from CSRD was with a real focus or primary focus on the stakeholder engagement side. So we want to have interviews or focus group sessions or especially a stakeholder survey in order to gather input. The big change that was published on the 23rd of August in 2023 now, so just indeed maybe 2 months ago, didn't change that, but added upon it a requirement to do what we call an IRO analysis at the start of things. So it in fact enhances the expert view on selecting what topics are most material and really asks from us that we do an identification of what impacts does the company have on each of these topics, and we look a bit more granular into subtopics or even sub-subtopics. So really seeing how is the company affecting people and planet on a variety of these topics, and in turn, really from that business point of view, what are the risks and opportunities attached with, for example, something like climate change? How is the company going to mitigate certain impacts that they may experience in the short, medium, or long term, and how does that also tie in with their financial picture? So really making that super tangible from both sides, not just looking at how is the company affecting people and planet, but also how is the context affecting the company and therefore potential business value. And if we link this back to the PE firms, obviously a very, very important thing for their own portfolio management is looking at the way that the value of their companies is developing throughout time.
Yeah. So thank you for that clarification. Also for all of you, of course, take that into account. Maybe just as a last question, maybe from your expert view, Thomas, as one of the senior consultants also leading the task force, what would you say are just a couple of practical tips that we can give to the public for some starting the CSRD journey, maybe for some who already are in that CSRD journey, but also maybe from more that private equity perspective, where should we start? What are these tipping points that you foresee from your clients that are maybe these milestones that we need to take care of?
Really good question, Mark. So I would say as a PE firm, if you're looking at your portfolio, we just mentioned already, make sure that you know which ones need to comply and which ones don't, right? That's an assessment you can do on your own. The next step is really engaging into conversation with each of them, right? Knowing with the sustainability manager, with the CFO, with whomever at those companies is responsible for leading the sustainability agenda. Engage with them to see where they're currently standing. Have they already started the process? Do they have the different pieces or building blocks that are required for CSRD? Do they already have them in place to some degree? Just gauging a little bit what is the level of maturity of your portfolio overall, but each of the individual companies with respect to CSRD. I think that assessment allows you to then also have a much clearer view of what are the gaps that we still need to bridge, what's really the required investment from each of these companies. And something that we see working really, really well is to just bring everyone together into one sort of session, workshop, where you maybe ask an expert or someone internally to explain more about what does CSRD mean, and have that conversation collectively, but also maybe to pull in a few front runners. If you have 1 or 2 companies that are a bit further ahead of the game than some of the others, put them in front, tell them, invite them to share with the rest of how is that journey for you, what are the challenges that you're coming across, so that you can really create also that feeling of, okay, we are doing this together, we can learn from each other, because let's face it, it's quite a journey that all the companies have moving ahead, and we're always super happy supporting clients with that process, seeing the quarters fall, and in the end, really building that sustainability strategy with them.
Thank you, Thomas. And I think thank you again, all of you online, for listening to the tips, and this time with Thomas, our senior consultant at Nexio Projects. So thank you for joining, Thomas.
Great to be here, Mark. Thank you very much.
And once again, thank you all for listening for this part with regards to the CSRD from a private equity and portfolio company perspective. See you next time, and hopefully see you soon.